Love in God is a profound and challenging subject because it touches the very nature of humanity and its relationship with the Creator. When people speak of love, they often think of freedom, a feeling of soaring, unbound, free to love and to be loved. But if love in God is absolute freedom, then why do we see limits in the Bible? Why do we find commandments, rules, and laws set by God? Is this a contradiction, or is there a deeper truth waiting to be discovered? From the very beginning, when God created mankind, He gave them a sacred gift, free will. Adam and Eve were not forced to love God. They had a choice, and that choice gave their love meaning. But freedom does not mean the absence of limits. In the Garden of Eden, God said, "You may eat from any tree in the garden, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you must not eat, for on the day you eat of it, you shall surely die." Genesis 2:16-17. A love without limits would lead to chaos, like a river with no banks, eventually becoming a stagnant and lifeless pool. Limits are not a prison. They are the framework that gives love its shape and its meaning. We see this clearly in the people of Israel. When God rescued them from Egypt, He did not just bring them out of slavery, He also gave them the 10 Commandments. If absolute freedom were the essence of love in God, He would not have done that. But He knew that without limits, people would fall into chaos and destroy themselves. You shall not do as we are doing here today, where everyone does whatever seems right in their own eyes. Deuteronomy 12:8. God did not set limits to bind people, but to protect them from their own misguided desires. So, is love in God about freedom or limits? The answer is not in choosing one over the other, but in the harmony of both. When Jesus came into the world, He did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. Matthew 5:17. He came to give humanity a new kind of freedom, not freedom to follow the desires of the flesh, but freedom to live in true love. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. John 8:36. True freedom is not the absence of limits. It is the willingness to accept limits for the sake of love. A father loves his child, not by letting them do whatever they want, but by guiding, protecting, and sometimes setting necessary boundaries. Jesus, when He was crucified on the cross, showed the greatest love of all. He could have escaped if He wanted to, but He chose to limit Himself for the love of humanity. It was in that limit that love reached its highest form, a love that gives, that sacrifices, and that brings life. Between freedom and limits, the key is not to choose one and reject the other. Love in God is not a blank canvas without form. It is a masterpiece, with structure, with lines, with colors. And it is the boundaries that give the painting its meaning. Love in God is not a bird wandering aimlessly in the endless sky. It is a journey, with a destination, with a guiding light. When we look at God's love, we see that freedom is not the absence of limits. It is making the right choices within those limits. When Jesus said, "Whoever wants to follow me must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me." Matthew 16:24. He was not taking away freedom. He was inviting people into a higher kind of freedom, a freedom from selfish desires to live in true love. This love does not force, but it is not careless either. It calls us to rise above our lower instincts and reach for something greater. People often mistake freedom for doing whatever they want. But if someone believes that love has no limits, no boundaries, is that truly love? Would a father let his child run straight into a busy highway without stopping them? Would someone who truly loves let their partner fall into temptation without warning them? God sets limits, not to restrain us, but to protect us. Like a fence around a vineyard, limits do not stop growth. They ensure that the fruit is not destroyed by wild beasts. God's love is not a form of harsh control. It is a purposeful guidance. When he gave the 10 Commandments, when he established principles in the Bible, he was not imprisoning humanity. He was showing them the path to life. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. Matthew 7:13. Limits are not chains. They are the open doors to true freedom. Looking at the life of Jesus himself, we see a beautiful paradox. He was all-powerful. He could have called down angels to destroy his enemies, but he chose the path of limitation. He lived as a man. He suffered. He hungered. He was tested, and he willingly died on the cross. Why? Because that is the path of love. Love without limits cannot have sacrifice, and without sacrifice, there is no true love. Freedom in God is not the freedom to do as we please. It is the freedom to love in the highest way. Everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. 1 Corinthians 10:23. Sometimes, to keep love alive, we must set limits for ourselves. A husband and wife remain faithful, not because they are forced to, but because they choose to keep their hearts for each other alone. A believer obeys God, not out of fear, but because they understand that true love is a commitment, a promise kept, even when there is a chance to break it. The world defines freedom as living without restraint, but in God, freedom is knowing that we belong to Him, knowing that love is not a reckless adventure, but a path with purpose, with light to guide the way. When a bird spreads its wings and flies into the wind, it does not see the wind as resistance, but as the force that lifts it higher. In the same way, love in God is not a limit that holds us back. It is the power that carries us to eternal life. As we reflect on love in God, we realize a profound truth. Freedom and limits are not opposites. They exist together to create perfect love. Without freedom, love would be nothing more than empty obligation. Without limits, love would be vague, unstable, easily distorted by human desires and selfishness. Only in the harmony of both can love rise to its fullest beauty. Look at the journey of the Israelites. We see this truth clearly. In Egypt, they were slaves without freedom. When God set them free, they gained liberty. But without His law, they would have fallen into chaos. So God gave them a framework, not to imprison them, but so they could live a blessed and holy life. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live. Deuteronomy 30:19. Love in God is not just a feeling. It is a choice. We were not born to wander aimlessly, but to walk in His light. When Jesus died on the cross, He did not choose the easy path. Yet within the limits of the cross, He revealed the greatest love. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. John 15:13. We are the same. If our love has no commitment, no boundaries, it will easily fall apart in times of trial. But if we place our love in God, if we understand that true freedom is the freedom to love in the right way, then that love will stand firm. It will endure. One who loves God is not forced to obey, but chooses to obey because they know within His commands there is life and blessing. In the end, love in God is not a choice between freedom or limits. It is the perfect union of both. Limits are not chains. They are the path to true freedom. Freedom is not reckless abandon. It is choosing to love with responsibility, and love in God is not temporary. It is an eternal covenant, a promise that never fades. In the end, the most important truth is this: true love is not doing whatever we want. It is surrendering our will to the one who loved us first. And in that surrender, We find joy, we find fulfillment, we find a love that never fades, an everlasting love in God.